Knockouts in 3 Counts starts now.
Ooh, what up? No, it is another Tuesday. This is Knockouts in 3 Counts. Amanda, we got an episode for you, one that I personally have been looking forward to for a while. We've got the debut of the legend himself. Ravenn is joining us tonight to talk about the new Nevermore documentary that you can find now on Prime Video and a lot of other places. Man, we appreciate your time.
Oh, no problem, man. I love talking about my movie. Sort of. Okay, I don't love talking about it. I hate talking about it. After the 50,000 interviews I've done, but you got to sell the movie, so you know.
We were literally just talking about that earlier too.
And it's a product I believe in. I mean, I really, to be honest, I thought about giving away the money if you weren't happy. Like when I do seminars, wrestling seminars, I have a policy that I get your money back if you weren't satisfied, completely satisfied. And I've never had to give a dime back, you know what I mean? Because I try to teach what I think people need to learn, psychology. And I've almost felt like doing that for this movie, but I'm like, I'm not taking a chance. Could be money I'd be spending out of my pocket too much, But, people would just be calling me and saying, hey, I didn't like it. I want my money back, But I really believe it. I think it's a really great movie. It's really, really good. The director did an amazing job.
I was going to say, man, I've watched it a couple times through and preparing to get ready for this. And I have to say, my number one takeaway was like, I have to give you a lot of credit off rip because I like that it was a full circle view. A lot of times when you see documentaries, sometimes it can either be doom and gloom. It can be, okay, let's just focus on all the positive stuff. Okay, let's just talk about just the wrestling stuff. I thought the way that you were able to go and talk about not only the highs, but the lows and the struggles that you dealt with through your career, and then to see where you're at now, from everything from just wrestling, even to like seeing you talk about things with your partner as well. What was it like for you? You talked about it at the beginning that you've done so many interviews for that, but like, what was it like having to recount all of these things throughout your life and career, and what was it like seeing that on a screen?
Well, first of all, I made sure that was the premise of the movie, was that we were going to have a warts and all picture. I didn't want to do a rah-rah movie. I didn't want to do just, yay, Ravenn, let's cheer him on, you know what I mean? Let's just show how great he was. I didn't want to do that. I wanted to show the whole complex picture, the good and the bad, the positive and the negative. And luckily the director was on board for that,
Well, J-Bone, that was the biggest thing you told me too when you seen it, though, was like, when you go back and look at it again, being somebody that's followed your career for so long, here's the first question I got out of that. Seeing the different sides of Ravenn, whether that be when you were Johnny Polo, whether that was Scotty the Body, whether that was Ravenn, what would Ravenn think of Scotty the Body or Johnny Polo now that you look back at it?
Ravenn would have no time for him.
Yeah.
He'd have no time for either one of them.
Well, with... I could totally see that.
I thought he would say that, man. I really did.
Well, I mean, there's such a stark difference from each other, and it's like, and you see the way the Ravenn character played out as you went through your career. Another guy that you showed prominently throughout the film too, which this was news to me as well, is another past guest of the show, Diamond Dallas Page. Talk to me a little bit about Page and how he kind of helped you with, a little bit of the formation of the Ravenn character.
Yeah, he pointed me in the right direction. Basically, it's Scotty Flamingo, Scotty the Body, Johnny Polo. They were all chicken shit heels, And I like being a chicken shit heel, but Page was like, no one's hiring that right now. You know what I mean? The bookers all want tough guys. You know what I mean? Bookers. So if you're gonna get a spot, a main spot, you're gonna have to be a tough guy. Which I had no problem being a tough guy. Like, I'm a former U.S. Marine. I've been in a million bar fights. I used to bounce at the clubs. But I just don't consider myself a tough guy when there's Rick Steiners and Hakus running around. You know what I mean? And plus, there's no subtlety and nuance in a tough guy, position. You know, at least I didn't think there was, but I figured I'd figure out how to do it though. And so I took Page's advice, and he pointed me in the right direction. He said the movie Point Break. He just saw the movie Point Break, not the remake, the original with the Red Hot Chili Peppers were in it.
Yep.
And he goes, you look like those dudes. Because, you know, like how I am now, how I dressed, you know, as Ravenn was how I dressed in real life. You know what I mean? And so basically, he pointed me in the right direction, and I came up with it. And I came up with the promos and the darkness, and then I started realizing it could be, take from my childhood, take my childhood pain, and put it out there for the world to see, and it's kind of cathartic too, but it's rough talking about the movie constantly. The reason I mention it, it's a pain in the ass talking about the movie is because every time I talk about it, it's like ripping that Band-Aid off again. I dealt with all the issues in therapy, with a therapist on a psychologist's couch, and you don't lay down either. You sit down mostly. So I was very disappointed in that. But, because I expected I'd get to lay down and take and be like, kick back. But, no.
Yeah, they don't like to lay down.
Yeah. Yeah, especially if you're laying on top of them. What?
Hey, man, that's a whole nother kind of therapy.
Yeah. that's you shouldn't have to be paying $200 an hour for that.
We are advocates for therapy here at Knockouts and Freakouts. So
good. Yeah, that's another thing I wanted people to see. I wanted people to go. Well, let me finish my thought. So even though I've dealt with all the issues and I'm cool with them all, every time I talk about it, it's like I bring it up and see it, or if I watch the movie, there it is again in color with video and picture, and it's just right there, all coming back, and it's all of it. It's all at once. It's not just one issue at a time, you know what I mean? It's a dozen, 20, 25 issues, you know what I mean? So it's rough talking about it too, but I feel like I'm really proud of the product, you know what I mean? I'm really proud of it, and I'm glad that I can address mental illness. I'm glad I can address, issues like, about myself, you know what I mean? I wanted people to understand me better. I wanted people to see my career. People who thought it was a success, I want them to see that it wasn't just all, bright lights and unicorns, And for people who thought it sucked, I want them to see that it wasn't so sucky. And, although that's rare, usually it's just people think that it's just all, rainbows and unicorns. But, yeah.
Well, and that's, like I said, that was, for me, that was the biggest takeaway that I liked about it, was that you were so straight up raw and honest with it. And talking about DDP helping you come up with the Ravenn character, I mean, can you talk a little bit about, I got to imagine there had to have been a big chip on your shoulder when you leave the cushy job that you had with WWF, and you're making six figures in the office doing the creative stuff, and when you were being a manager over there. But I got to imagine when you went back out, because you said in the movie how, wrestling was your love. Wrestling was what you wanted to do. Wrestling was where you wanted to be at. Talk to me a little bit about the chip that you had as that character was created as well, because I got to imagine that's got to light a fire under you to prove that you were more than just a manager or the creative mind that everybody knows you for.
Yeah, well, I wasn't even thought of as a creative mind except by, Vince at that point, so like, my so-called wrestling creativity was very unknown, because I hadn't been anywhere in a position at that point, other than from what I bragged about, because I was so insecure that that made me egotistical, so I would brag about it. But other than that, people weren't listening to me about how great I was, It's weird. Insecurity is all based on egotism. Egotism is all based on insecurity. If you're egotistical, it's because you're insecure. It's not because you really think you're great. You're trying to convince other people to convince you that you're great.
Absolute facts right there.
Bro, that's something that we hear so often. We talked about it a little bit before we went live, and we'll get into it a little bit later on. But in the world of MMA, how many times we've had fighters come on here that'll tell you, like flat out, right before they get ready to walk to a cage or something like that, dude, I was scared as shit before I went out there to fight, but I had to make everybody else in there, including the guy I was getting ready to fight, think that I was ready to go. And then once that switch flips, which for you guys walking through the curtain, it's like it's such a parallel.
Well, what I'm most amazed at by an MMA is when guys are so far behind and then they somehow come back. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Like to me, it's like, how do you have the wherewithal to get, like when Leon won the title from Kamaru Usman, you know?
Facts.
You know, especially because you could tell he was having an off night, you know what I mean? And then his corner gave him the rah-rah speech, you know, and he went out there and head kicked him, you know, and knocked him out.
Headshot bang.
Amazing.
Yeah, headshot bang, yeah.
Amazing.
And yeah, it's just like, it's like how, and he was getting just dominated, you know, destroyed. It's like you know, that's crazy to me, you know.
Dude, and what's crazy is it's crazy you bring up Leon Edwards because he just fought this past Saturday on the UFC.
Yeah, that made me sad.
I know.
Same.
I was so happy for Praches and Michael Morales and Francois Demine, the French guy, Benoit Saint-Denis. Yeah. I was so happy for those guys, but I was so sad for the three opponents, you know what I mean? For Edwards, but especially for Sean Brady, you know?
Yes.
And Benil Dariush, they just got wiped out, you know? I mean, like, wiped out. Yeah, I didn't think that. And like, you know, it made the card, I was just texting Ariel Hawani, who I met on the show the other day, on the show a couple weeks ago. That the show, I only gave the show a C. Like I gave it an A minus, A plus on paper, but I gave it a C in performance because the matches weren't that great. The two main were terrible. You know, I mean, they were dominations, and then the three other main were they were knockouts so early that instead of making it, to me, I'd rather see good long matches. I don't just want to see quick knockouts. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know, I got to tell you, it's funny that we're talking about this fight because we often make the joke here on the show that sometimes MMA does pro wrestling better than pro wrestling does. And it leads me to ask, I got to know, what did you think of the big brawl kind of coming back around for Dylan Donis before the fight? Did you see the clips of that?
No, I haven't seen the clips yet.
Do you remember when Conor McGregor and Khabib fought, and there was the big brawl that happened when Khabib jumped out the cage on Dylan Donis? So Dylan Donis was down there in the first few rows, and then the first 4 or 5 rows of people down there were all Islam Makhachev's guys, and a giant ass brawl broke out as soon as the main card went on.
Yeah, I saw that it was going on. I didn't know who was involved in it though.
Yeah, Dylan Donis got banned from all future UFC events. They didn't charge him. They didn't press any charges, but he got his ass kicked pretty good because even Masvidal was on a reel like, Dylan Donis just got his ass kicked. Chaco beat me to it.
There was a lot of reels of him staggering out of there.
Did they show him getting hit?
Oh, dude, you could see him get stomped out pretty good because they jumped all over him. I don't know how it started, but Dylan Donis definitely got stomped out.
Well, for him to get banned like that, I would assume he was, the one that started it.
Well, dude, he was the one that was involved yelling from the corner when the fight with Khabib and Conor happened, which is why the whole first brawl happened. So he was already guilty by association, whether it was his fault or not.
Well, he's 2 for 2 on getting roughed up, so I would say it's probably better off you just stay away at this point.
You would think. But talking about, we talked a little bit about the formation of the Ravenn character. ECW was one of the coolest things for me growing up as a wrestling fan because it was so different from what you were seeing in anywhere else, whether that was WCW, WWF, even down to like what you had to do to go through to, see it. And then obviously, as anyone that's watched it knows, like the stories and everything were also cutting edge. And I agree with Tommy Dreamer when he says that it was the catalyst for what we would later see with the Attitude Era. In your thoughts, what do you think it is about ECW now that we're so far removed from it that's made it have a legacy that's stuck all this time?
It was a revolution. It was you don't realize how bad wrestling was before it, but it was terrible. It was all big 280-pound guys grabbing a chin lock and sitting in it. They weren't working the hold. They would just sit there in a hold for 5 minutes, wait for the crowd to come along if they were going to come along, and if not, then they wouldn't do anything. They just sit there longer. And the matches were just, it wasn't. The athleticism wasn't great, but the storylines weren't great either. You need both, but you need the storylines more than you need anything. You need characters and stories. And so the show was wrestling was so bad at the time, so it needed something new. It needed an injection, an infusion of. Also, it needed to be topical. Wrestling has always been in a bubble, and that's why wrestlers had mullets 10 years after they went out of style. They did. They had them. They still some.
It's coming back these days.
Yeah,
just look at Dirty Dom.
But the wrestlers had no idea, and the rest of the world was changing around them, and nobody does anything, topical or current. Billy Gunn and them and Road Dogg got over it first just for wearing a South Park shirt, and then of course their talent showed through, but it was the South Park shirt that got them over in the first place, just something that's topical, and so ECW was topical. They played current music, they played trendy music. And not just metal. They played all kinds of stuff. They played everything from Tupac to 3-Pac. No, and they had different styles. They brought in the guys from Mexico, so that was unique. They had the smaller guys, the cruiserweights, who could do great matches. Then they had the brawling heavyweights who could brawl. Fighting in the stands, the crowd bringing stuff like the Rocky Horror Picture Show. It was just the first time I saw the show, I was like, I got to be on this show, and that's when I had DDP get a hold of Paul E for me and get me on the show, because it was the greatest show I'd ever seen. I just watched an episode and I was like, holy shit, I'm a fan, I'm a convert. I'd always heard it was garbage wrestling, but garbage wrestling is such a shitty term for
cookie cutter.
For not cookie cutter, yeah. And also garbage wrestling, sure, a lot of people do hardcore matches, just like I hit you, you hit me, but I always try to do it with psychology and tell a story. Babyface shines, heel gets heat, babyface makes a comeback. I tell a story with I just use the weapons as props. It's like you can do that's why I like working tag matches. I prefer being a singles because I'm egotistical, and I like to be I want to be get the glory myself. But that's why I like having partner sidekicks and henchmen, so I can do all the run-ins and do all kinds of crazy stuff that I can't do alone. Because the more props you have, the more creative you can be.
Right. And
that's how I looked at the garbage matches, so to speak. One of my favorite spots ever was me and Dreamer were working, and he's down and I'm down and I'm getting up first. And while we're both down though, Beulah's on the outside. She's squatting down low, so you're not noticing her, but she's on the outside taping a frying pan to Tommy's shin. And so when we get up, nobody really knows. They kind of saw that, and then he goes to kick me with his other foot. I catch it. And he enziguris me with the frying pan on his shin. Greatest spot ever. Tremendous. But you couldn't do that without weapons,
Right.
There's just so much more creativity you can put in. That's the drop to hold with the chair. Same thing. Which I actually have to give credit to Shane Douglas. He actually invented that. He used it one night, and I thought it was the greatest thing I'd ever saw, because it was what a usage of the chair without killing the guy, you know what I mean?
And technically, you can get away with it in a
Could
match.
knocked unconscious and shouldn't be out for a week.
Yeah, true.
Yeah, and also doesn't scramble his brain either. And I saw him do it. I was like, that's great. He goes, you want it? I go, yeah. He goes, it's yours. So I took that spot and ran with it.
Love that.
J-Bone, he brought up something that I know you wanted to talk about and something that I always thought stood out to me with ECW, and that's the music. So I'll leave that one to you.
Yeah. Well, so I know grunge era music. I mean, in the 90s, man, there was grunge era music and rock and roll music that we weren't supposed to be hearing. There was Alice in Chains. There was Alice Cooper was one of my big ones. But for you, I know you don't
I loved Alice Cooper. I loved Alice in Chains too.
Yeah, I know you don't listen. I've seen that you don't listen to a lot of music these days. But for you back in that day, how much influence did that have on your
Huge,
Ravenn?
Huge. Yeah, I was so into music at the time, yeah, no, it was a huge influence. You know, I used to quote. You know, I like to take lines out of songs and quote them. You know, and I'd wrap a promo around them. And now, and the cool thing is, if you use a song lyric, if they don't recognize the song lyric, it's just a cool line, and they think you came up with it, so you get dope credit for that. And if they do recognize it, they're like, oh, I know that song, I know that that line, and it's not like you're plagiarizing it because you're not trying to, you're just using it as for effect.
And it's almost cooler if you know it too, because it's like, oh
yeah,
man, we're on the same wavelength here, aren't we?
It's like when Bret Hart said when he wrestled at the WrestleMania where he lost to Owen, but then he won the title, and he goes, "You can't always get what you want, but sometimes you get what you need."
Right.
Which ironically has always been my motto too in life. I don't always get what I want, but I get what I need. I've always been very lucky about that, like that.
And that's a good thing to have, plus especially if it's at the right time. Another thing that really stuck out to me when you guys were going through that portion of your career, and it's something that, I mean, you've heard people talk about for years, and that's when you're listening to people talk about Paul Heyman. What was it about Paul Heyman that made that guy such the genius that you hear people talk about so much? Because to this day, it's like one of the number one things you hear, and even to what we're seeing now on TV with him and the Vision and all that stuff, you always hear people talk about how much influence he has in helping the guys and girls that are back there today. But what was it that made him stand out so much when you guys were going through ECW?
Well, he was a genius when it came to wrestling. He understood the psychology so much more than anybody else. He also understood pop culture, and he was able to capture the zeitgeist. Whatever was in pop culture, like we just talked about, whatever was popular, he was able to tie that in. And that's part of the problem with bookers. Bookers aren't, they don't usually have a hand in pop culture. They're usually older and past their coolness date, so to speak. Yeah, Paulie was just, and he was motivational too. Like he prided himself on being like Vince Lombardi, is what he said to me one time. And he wanted to be like, because he wanted to be like a coach as opposed to just your booker. He wanted to be the guy that motivates everybody, and motivates each one. And he motivated everybody differently. Like he would motivate me much differently than he would Tommy, or Sandman, or RVD, or whoever. You know what I mean? Or Sabu.
Well, and that's the crazy thing about it too, is you guys had such the, I heard Taz say this once, and I think even though it can sound like an insult, I think it's the biggest compliment of the overall roster that you guys had there. He said it was like the land of the misfit toys. You guys had guys and girls there that if you put them anywhere else, who knows what they would have done. You put them in ECW with the minds that were there, and you guys made stories that were so different from anything that we had
Paulie
seen.
Paulie knew how to hide. He knew how to accentuate everybody's strengths and hide their weaknesses. Like he made the world think the Public Enemy was the greatest tag team ever. Yeah. But that's because he selectively showed footage, and he put them in positions where they would shine, and didn't put them in positions where they would look like shit. It's like. Yeah, like I used to hate when I'd watch WCW or something, and watch a squash match, and you'd have some guy that you'd be trying to get some guy over as a tough guy, and then he'd fight some 6'6" guy who's clumsy. You think the thought was him beating the 6'6" guy will make him look tougher. But if the guy's clumsy and can't do anything, it just makes the guy look worse, I mean, some ideas like that,
kind of like what we were talking about with the fights. Styles make fights.
Yeah.
Styles make a good match. I definitely can see where they correlate. With that being said, another thing that stuck out to me, and I've heard Paul say this as well. I've always heard Paul say that he kind of saw himself through the Ravenn character. What was it about that character, do you think, that helped Paul to be able to connect with that, and you vice versa? Because it just really came across in the movie like the combination of you guys, creativity between the two of you guys is what kind of spawned a lot of that great stuff that we saw through that run.
Well, thank you. I think he was a misunderstood child himself. You know what I mean? And I think that's why he saw through the Ravenn's eyes. That's such a big compliment that he thinks that he says that about me.
Well, and I mean, you had so many layers to it. And then the one thing that I enjoyed with your career from watching it as a fan just was like the different intricacies of each different feud. Like your feud with Tommy Dreamer was so different from the feud that you had with Sandman. And then, different than what you did in WCW, from different what you did in WWF. That's the one thing that I always appreciated watching your stuff growing up as a kid, is everything was so different from opponent to opponent. And now going, as I've gotten older, obviously, and you get to watch and learn about how much input you had on the creative parts about that. What was it about? I feel like your rivalry with Dreamer and Sandman, for that matter, are two of the best ones that you'll find in pro wrestling. So since I brought up Dreamer first, talk to me about that. What are your overall thoughts on that rivalry, and what do you think made it stand out and so special, and what are some of the high point marks for you as well?
I think what stood out was everybody can understand the jealous friend. Everybody understands that. They understand the fat girl who was in love with the guy that didn't get him, so she left. So she went with the other guy. Everybody can identify with that. It's like he was the perfect foil. That's why I had him when we first started. I told him, I want you to hit my pose, because I came with the crucifix pose, and I told him I wanted him to hit it too. I wanted him to be the antithesis of me. Like, I was the devil, he was the angel, and it worked out great. I mean, he was game for anything. Tommy's great. Tommy's, he's fantastic to work with. He was just up for anything, and he always trusted me too. Like, that was another big thing. Like, if I had an idea, no matter how stupid it sounded, he'd trust me, because he knew that either A, it would work, B, if it didn't work, I would take full responsibility for it, and C, out of respect, because I'd been around a little bit and he hadn't, that that's another thing that worked with ECW, was nobody had been anywhere. Most of the guys, other than me on the main roster, nobody had really worked any territories. And so Paulie, they thought that, all the boys thought that, the way Paulie ran the locker room was the way everybody ran a locker room, where they'd give motivational speeches every month, at the arena and stuff like that. And that wasn't it. Paulie tried to run it like a team, as opposed to everybody's out for themselves, whereas in the main big companies, they would try and have the everybody at each other's, snipping at each other's tails, because that way they wouldn't get mad at the office.
True.
And you always see the famous speech that he had before the first ECW pay-per-view. Fuck you, we're right. Fuck you, you're wrong. And you hear about those different things through the way, dude. And that will live that'll live in infamy for a long time.
I don't think.
He would give a speech before every ECW show, not before every show, but before every Philadelphia show, every 3 weeks, and which was interesting. He ran it every 3 weeks, not every 4, like most places. Most places run it, but I think 3's better, because you get better. You need to be 4 is too much programming and too much lazy time for the audience, but he'd give a speech every Philadelphia, and the first time I heard it, I was like, oh man, I can't believe this garbage these people are buying. And then by the end of it, I was like, I'm drinking the Kool-Aid too.
I think we all were. We all were.
Clearly somebody was, or we wouldn't be talking about it all these years later. You know, you brought up something in your answer for that. That was another thing that stuck out to me. As I mentioned, I've not only, gotten the pleasure of seeing you wrestle in the big companies, I've gotten to see a lot of your stuff in the indies as well. How do you feel like your time, you being one of the last guys who really kind of got to go through the territory, so to speak, whether that be Portland or wherever before you kind of had gotten bigger? How do you feel like that kind of helped you as you started to navigate ECW, WCW, WWE? Because I've heard Jericho talk about that a lot, like the fact that he got to go to Mexico and Japan and all those things before he went to ECW, and how he felt that made him more well-rounded for when he got to the bigger companies.
Oh yeah, it made me so much better. I mean, I learned how to work in Portland. I mean, really work. Because you'd wrestle 6 nights a week, and you'd wrestle 20 minutes every night. So you had to learn how to work. Or you just have shitty matches and get booed at, and that's embarrassing. If after a bit of that, you're like, I'm not going to get embarrassed anymore.
Absolutely, man. We brought up Sandman. I got to tell you, it was cool. That was what was cool about WrestleMania weekend last weekend. That was the first time I've ever gotten to see Sandman's entrance live. I was there at Sabu's last match. Talk to me a little bit about your feud with Sandman. You had so many different things. Obviously, the notable one everybody
Wait,
talks
you said
about.
Sandman was at WrestleMania?
Well, yeah, he came out for Sabu's last match. It was the GCW show. I'm just saying WrestleMania weekend.
I was going to say, I didn't hear about that.
He did the Sandman entrance out at the Palms when Sabu had the match against Janela. He came down through the crowd where we were at. That's the first time I ever got to see the
cool
Enter Sandman entrance live, so that was cool. My dad was always such a big Metallica guy, and so naturally I was always such a fan of that. I still have One Night Stand, the first one on the DVD, and seeing that entrance was dope. So getting to see that and be there with that with Sabu was dope. But talking about the Sandman thing, that you guys hit so many different things that were first, whether that be using Sandman's kid in the angle, doing the crucifixion angle, doing a lot of the things that happened with that, or using Sandman's wife. I mean, talk to me about that feud and just like what was the thought process as you guys went through that? Because it just seemed like you guys know that you were breaking so many barriers as you went through that, and was that kind of the mindset, like how can we like turn this up another notch? Because I feel like there were so many things you guys did that you never saw before.
Yeah, you nailed it. We wanted to turn it up a notch. Every time, I'm never content. I'm like, if I come up with a bunch of spots, and I'm like, let's use all these spots. We'll get them all in, and then somebody will say, well, no, let's save some for next week. And I'm like, well, no, next week we'll think of something else. And most guys are worried they're not going to be able to think of stuff, but I was never like that. I was always like, let's use what we got now, and then we'll come up with something new later. And so we just kept upping the ante, until, as far as we could take it. And then when we couldn't take it anymore, then we split the angle off, like that's what was same with me and Dreamer. We went as far as we could go at first. I had so many partners turn on me and join up with him. And we ran the course of that. And then it was time for me to go and to separate. But then we'd always come back to each other, And same with Sandman. And me and Dreamer are still feuding 25 years later, 30 years later. I'll be snipping his IV bag at the old age home when we're done with this.
I mean, dude, between you and Bubba Dudley, I know you guys are good friends with him, but I swear one of y'all might be the end of Tommy Dreamer. And speaking of the Dudley boys, man, that's another thing I want to talk about. We talk about a lot of the things that you came up with and the creativity of those. I know you were the thought process, or at least helped the idea of what happened with the Dudley boys. Talk to me about how that came to be, and now that they just had their last match as a team in TNA a couple weeks ago at Bound for Glory. What do you think the overall legacy of the Dudleys will be?
One of the greatest tag teams ever, obviously. Unfortunately for them, they came in an era when tag team wrestling wasn't at the top of the heap. It wasn't the top of the card. Like if they'd have been around 5 to 10 years earlier, or 15 years earlier, really, in '85 instead of 2000. Yeah, 10 years, I guess, 95, 85. I don't know. The Dudleys were amazing, but the way I came up with them was I was sitting in Florida sports, the Florida Fairgrounds arena. We were at Sports Arena, I don't know, whatever it's called. And so I started thinking about the slap shot. Somebody said something, and it made me think of slap shot where the Hanson brothers are putting on the foil. Yes. I go, somebody asked me, what are you doing? I go, I'm putting on the foil, coach, every game. And quoted the slap shot, and I was like, we need to have a Hanson brothers act. We need an act like that with the glasses and stuff like that, but without any lenses in them because they're idiots, And Bubba and Devon weren't even like the first 5 Dudleys. They were like number 8 and 9. Yeah, we had like a whole baseball team worth of Dudleys before we got to the Bubba, and before we found the ones that stuck. But that's how they came up. That's how we came up with them. And then Taz came up with the outfit because Taz thought that, in his psychology was that the dad was sleeping around with the mom. Yep. The mom was just a whore and she was a hippie, and that's why he put him in tie-dyed and overalls. I remember. And the overalls tied into the Ravenn jean shorts. Okay. So that was another reason too, So they were they had jeans in their outfit too to tie in with Ravenn. Go ahead.
I was going to say, what's funny about it though is that, and the cool part about the story is Bubba and Devon hated each other at first, beat the shit out of each other before they were a tag team.
Did they really?
Yeah, man. I remember watching. They had a lot of one-on-one matches, and Devon used to bully the shit out of Bubba before Bubba snapped. Like I said, I was a big fan of the Dudleys. So
really, I never knew that, or maybe I knew it and I forgot it.
I used to love those promos where they'd hit him on the back of the head to make him talk.
Yes, dude, he'd smack the shit out of him out the back side of the head and like wake him up.
He'd get a stutter. He'd get a little stutter.
Yeah, I loved Bubba's character. I mean, he's smart. He broke away from it because that's where he's going to make more money. But it was so entertaining that he was so good at being the big dumb idiot. My name is Bubba Ray Dudley. I own a millionaire. I own a mansion and a yacht.
Hell yes, that. I remember all that stuff, dude.
God, and he could juggle and stuff, and he could dance. So he would dance and juggle, and which just made him even more endearing,
That's what's so crazy, and like you said, him being smart enough to know that eventually he had to get away with it, and then for him to be able to do a character like that, to then what you see with when he did in TNA with Aces and Eights and Bully Ray and all that stuff, man. It definitely shows the range that he had. Shout out to Bubba Dudley and past guests of the show, Devon Dudley, man. Definitely, one of my favorite teams growing up as a kid.
Who hated who? Because Devon is so lovable. I don't know how anybody could hate Devon.
Well, Bubba, like you said, was like the lovable idiot at first. So Devon would kind of like bully him and tell him like enough.
Yeah, I thought you meant in real life though. You said
no. I just mean before they became a team. I remember watching the lead up to that where Devon would tell him to quit fucking around, and then that's when the Dudleys got serious.
Oh, I thought. No wonder I couldn't remember it.
Yeah.
I thought you meant in real life they would beat each other up in matches.
Oh no!
I mean, they could have known each other in the Indies like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. I'm
glad we cleared that up. I was really confused about that.
Oh no! I just meant I love the way that you guys had played into that when you watched the whole lead up to it. How you go from, like you said, how Bubba was like the lovable idiot, and then Devon comes around and's like, enough of this playing around shit, and then they become this team that literally makes people just throw shit at him and want to jump the rail at him. Like you said, the overall scope of how that changed, I just felt like was really fun to watch.
Yeah, it's good stuff. It's really good stuff.
Another one of your creations that entertained the hell out of me, especially because I was such a Cactus Jack fan and I loved his run in ECW as well, is the BWO, man. Talk to me about the BWO, what hands you had in that, and what made them so fun to watch.
Well, the I started one day. I came with the idea that Stevie and the Meanie should they should emulate their I think it was who was it? They should emulate the Fabulous Ones. I want them to do the Fargo Struts. I want them to be like that was their heroes, the Fabulous Ones, and they're gonna Fargo Strut. And of course they did it terribly, and which made it all the funnier. And then from there, then I'm like, let's pick some other characters that I liked, and we'll highlight them. You know what I mean? And then they did Baron von Raschke and Baron von Stevie and Colonel Domini.
Yes.
You know, which was the funniest moment ever in ECW. Like I was laughing, trying so hard not to laugh. Like I'd never broke character before, and we're at the Lulu Temple, and Stevie's skin wig is popping off his head, and I'm sitting there trying not to laugh, and Brian Lee's in my corner, and and I'm sitting in the corner, and Brian Lee's standing, and he's leaning into the corner, leaning into my ear, going, "That's some funny shit. Why aren't you laughing at that? Come on, that's some funny ass shit." And I'm trying so hard not to laugh, and my shoulders started heaving. They started going up and down, and I'd hide my face because I was starting to laugh, and my shoulders would heave even more, and then I'd put my face up, look really mean, and start laughing again. Oh, it was so funny. And the best part was Stevie didn't think it would get over at all. He's like, "This isn't going to work, boss. This is stupid." I'm like, and we almost got into a fist fight about it. That's how, like, and then I'm like, "I'm telling you, it's going to get over." And he had to eat so much crow for that. That, I smeared that in his face for a long time after that. But, yeah, me and him had some tension between us. But, I'd like to think it's all in the past. But he wouldn't, as you saw, he wouldn't be interviewed for the movie, so I don't know what the deal is. But I think he's so talented. I think he's so talented, too.
That shows a lot on your end to be able to say those things. Like I said, all you can do is what you can do. That was one thing, that I really took out of the movie as well. Is a lot of times when you see guys like you who have been around wrestling for so long, not only through the territories but everything else, but that have dealt with the damage like you did. You see a lot of people that are like so negative and jaded towards the business. The coolest thing for me was at the end of it, when you see you and your partner talking about just your everyday life. Like, you genuinely seem like in 2025, Ravenn just seems like he's enjoying his life. I don't know if I'm wrong, but it just seems like it was cool to see you really seem like you're in a good place.
Yeah, I'm content. I'm as content as I've ever been. Which really should be the goal for people.
Agreed.
But you don't realize how much when you're chasing your dreams, you don't realize how much content means, because content seems like you're selling out on your dreams, but it's not. Content is so hard, and I'm mostly content. I don't know if I'll ever be completely content, but I'm good with where I'm at now. I can live with it. If this is my level of contentment for the rest of my life, I'm okay with that.
That's that hustler mindset, man. I think anyone that had a goal or had something that they wanted to strive for, I think there's always a little bit of that. And I mean, we talked a little bit about, it being you doing this movie, being able to open up and let people talk about, mental health and those things. I think that's another thing that comes out of that. I know that's something for me. I go to therapy myself, dude. That's something I'm trying to strive for in my everyday life, just to be cool with where I'm at. Chasing after this, chasing after that. Let me do my thing, stay in my own lane, and what everybody else is doing really ain't my business.
Well, I had a friend of mine who was, I'm not gonna say who, but he was broken. Like, a friend of his died, and his best friend died, and it broke him. And I told him he should get some therapy, and he's like, I don't want. I'm like, no. I go, look, if you had broke your arm, you'd put a cast on it, wouldn't you? He's like, yeah. I go, well, if your brain's broken, then you would have to mend it in the only way there is, which is either medication. There's self-medication, which is not the best way. There's medication, and then there's therapy. And I recommend you either get therapy or medicate, or go see a shrink and get medication. But I said I actually recommend you get therapy first, because you should try. I think you should always try to work out your issues with a therapist first, and if you can, then go to a shrink and get medication. You know, if you still can't deal. But yeah, it's so he went and he got therapy, and he still occasionally sees her whenever he has an issue come up or something. But he yeah, it really it affected him so much. You know, I mean, like when you're broken, when your brain's broken, which is either by brain being broke, I mean you're dealing with issues that you can't deal with anymore. You know, or if you have anxiety or whatever, you know, insecurity. You know, talking about it with somebody who knows how to get the answers out of you to figure out why you're behaving this way or why you feel this way is so important. You know, and one thing that's really important is don't just take the first therapist. You know, if she doesn't,
I agree 100% with that.
If she or he doesn't do the right job for you, then find somebody else. They should make you, in a perfect world, from what I understand and what's worked on me, is they make you find the answers. You know, like it's like they'll ask you the question and you're like, I'm here to find the answers. They're like, it's always directed back to you so that you can find your own answers because it's much more empowering, I guess.
That's one thing I think we always find ourselves answering our own questions in therapy. That's like
well, did you ever notice this is a really fascinating thing that I've always talked about is we teach what we need to learn. Like, you ever find yourself giving somebody advice and then you think about it and you go, if you thought about it, you would go, wait a minute, I can use that advice. I need that advice for me.
Because it's easier to tell somebody else than when it's your own shit.
Right, and it's really you trying to teach yourself but not realizing that. You know, the subconscious is like, we need to know this. And half the time, you know, I mean, it's so true. We teach what we need to learn.
That's exactly right.
I completely agree with that. And like I said, that stuff's done wonders for me. One other thing I wanted to ask you about, we've talked about him briefly. Obviously, he just passed. I was at the funeral that was here in Michigan. You know, one of the most influential people through ECW and stuff like that, obviously, was Sabu. Can you talk to me about your memories with Sabu and what do you think his legacy is going to be on wrestling?
I like Sabu. We and him always got along really well. It's funny because we didn't get along at all at first. Like, he would just ignore. Like, Paulie apparently told him that I was a douche and to stay away from me, and he kind of intimated the same thing to me towards Sabu, to keep us apart so that when we eventually feuded, it would have so much more impact, he felt, which we never even feuded, which was ironic, because we just never got around to the plot, to the part of the show. You know, when we were ready, by the time we were ready to feud, I think I just left or he was gone again, and then I left or whatever. I forget the order of things. You know, it's 30 years.
I get you.
But one day I went out, so we'd never talked at all, other than we'd grunt at each other as we walked by in the hallway. And he always used to drive a Winnebago to his shows because he hated flying. So he brought a Winnebago and he would drive it to the shows. And so him and Sandman and a bunch of the other guys were out there in the Winnebago getting high, I guess. And I had to go find Sandman for something, so I went out to the Winnebago, and so I said, "Hey, is Sandman in here?" He's like, "Yeah, come on in." And then we started talking, and Paul and Sabu was like, "Hey, Paulie told me to stay away from you," and I go, "Hey, he told me to stay away from you too." And then we just ended up getting along really well. So we've always been buddies. I mean, we were never close, but we were always like, you know, good buddies, you know.
Yep.
And his legacy, go ahead.
There was a spot in the documentary where you were actually coaching some guys. I'm pretty sure it was Ricky Shane Page from MLW. And you mentioned Sabu and the guy with the chair. And that just kind of made me smile because that's like the little
That's what made me want to ask about that.
Sabu leaves little hinting impacts on the business, and that's one of them. Throwing the chair at a guy.
That's one of the greatest spots I've ever seen. Because it's the same thing with this. It's like drop to hold on the chair. It's the use of the chair without making it like just a knockout shot with the chair shot. You know what I mean? And it's also, it makes so much noise when you throw it that way. When you bang it off, it rattles, and chairs usually make a good rattly noise. So as you go up to take the shot, you go boosh and you push, and it just rattles and bangs up because it's got enough weight to it and heft. Mm-hmm. That's why you can't fake chairs. You know, like I asked somebody in WWE one time in the Magic department. I said, why don't you guys ever? I think maybe I didn't ask. Maybe I was listening and somebody was talking about it, but I forget. But whatever it was, is the thing is you can't make a chair. You can't make it look stiff and like cherry enough without making it too soft where it would just bend. You know what I mean? Like it would either bend, like when we hacksaw Jim Duggan's 2x4 when they in WCW when they gave him a prop one and it turned into an S shape because the rubber bent. Yeah. So that's why you have to use real chairs. But so what a great spot to throw the chair. So it hurt. I mean, you think to yourself that it hurts. It doesn't, but you think it hurts as a fan. But and you can accept that it hurts without taking it as like a full-on chair shot, which should knock the guy, halfway out. You know what I mean?
Always looks gnarly.
And it looks like you killed the guy too.
Yeah.
Especially you catch him when he comes in running, like the stopping momentum like that. Mm-hmm. Always love that. R.I.P. Sabu for sure. Obviously we're talking on Knockouts and Three Counts podcast. We got to talk about your podcast. Talk to me about getting into the podcast game. What does that do for you in a creative outlet? Because I listened to your show a lot when I was working midnights and stuff like that. And so that was another thing that I was glad that they showed in the documentary as well. Talk to me about the podcast and the outlet that gives you.
Yeah, it's the Ravenn Effect podcast. It comes out every Monday. It's just an outlet for my creativity, and we don't really talk about wrestling at all. It's wrestling adjacent. We're adjacent to the wrestling business, only because that's what I do for a living. But I don't want to talk about wrestling. I don't follow it anymore. I don't. I still love it when I go when I'm at a show. You know what I mean? But
absolutely.
But the podcast it's just pure. It's just an outlet to be funny. All it is me trying to be funny every 5 seconds. If you don't like one joke, there's another 10 coming around the corner that'll make you. One of them will make you laugh. And it's just entertaining, and it's just fun to do. I've been doing it for so long now. It's just like a habit. It's like I've been doing it since, before COVID. So it's got to be 6-7 years.
It's been at least that, because I've been on the job I'm on now for at least 5, and I was on the other one for 3 years before that. So you've been doing this a hot minute.
Yeah, luckily, like I wanted to do one, but like when they first started, like actually before anybody did podcasts, I did a YouTube show, but I didn't have any way to monetize it, so I stopped doing it after a little bit. Plus, I didn't like doing it by myself, and there's no way I was going to find somebody else to do it who didn't without it making money. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I wouldn't even have thought to be able to Zoom call anybody back then. You know what I mean? It was so long ago, like 2010.
Hell,
and
we
then
wouldn't have thought of that before 2020.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then Jericho called me up and asked me if I wanted to do a podcast on his network, because he used to start a little network. He started me, K100.
Yep.
And somebody else, I forget. I don't know if they're still around. And so it was like, yeah, sure. And so I ran through a couple of hosts, had one of my best friends ever. He was doing it for a long time, but then it becomes a chore, you guys know. You don't think it is. It's an hour a week, but it somehow becomes a chore too, like if you let it. And so he was too busy, and so he stopped doing it. And then I got 2 other guys that, so obviously I'm not doing it for the money, or I wouldn't have 2 extra sidekicks. But it's easier with 2 more people. It's more people to play off of. Right. And it's just a fun time,
Totally can relate to that, because that's kind of
it gives you a reason to talk every week. I like that about it. We get to talk every week and just catch up and shoot the shit on our show.
Yeah, exactly.
Sometimes this show's label isn't what it seems. Knockouts and 3 counts gets a little weird after about 10 o'clock. So
Yeah, dude. I mean, you never know what you get into. And I mean, when Corey's with us too, Corey's our resident MMA guy, but he was never really into wrestling. So sometimes it's cool to get his thoughts on the stuff because he's totally so far away from wrestling that he's going to see things way different than me and J-Bone do, and then vice versa. So I agree. The more people you have on a show, it makes it easier for you to be able to play off everybody and all those things. I got one more question that we usually end every show with because I know you're going to have a hilarious answer with this. But everybody who's watching it says we got about 317 of y'all in here. Make sure you guys hit that subscribe button, the retweet button, share button, all those buttons, the buttons. But we call this segment the Locker Room Etiquette segment, but it's not what you think. I'm not trying to get you to tell me all the secrets of the locker room. I'm not trying to get you to poke pictures at anybody.
Before that, I just wanted to, I don't think we mentioned it, but the documentary came out today.
Yes, today.
That was where I was gonna end with that one on. But yes, if you haven't gotten to check that out, it's on Amazon Prime. I've gotten to watch it. J-Bone's gotten to watch it. Raven's getting tired of talking about it at this point. But again, if you have not gotten to check it out, I can't recommend it enough. I've literally recommended it to 4 different people that I know today. A few of them are in the comments as we speak. Shout out to Vince and Nick watching. Vince, I know he was watching from Florida as well and said he was going to check it out today as well. So I definitely, like the man said, you need to check it out. Nevermore. It's on Amazon Prime. I know it's on Gather. It's on all the places.
It's on Apple as well.
Actually, it's Apple. It's not starting, I don't think, for a little while yet. It was supposed to be on Apple too, but I think that's not for a while. So we'll go to Prime, Amazon Prime. You definitely find it there.
Definitely you'll enjoy it, man. And again, like I said, I love the full circle view that the movie brings to you. I definitely will be watching it again myself. But like I was saying, man, I'm telling you, I know he's going to have a funny one with this. So we've had everybody from Josh Briggs from NXT, who you can see who's live on TV right now. He told us, bring your own wrist tape, bring your own squirt bottle. We've had wash your balls, keep your baby mama out the locker room. Shake, obviously the ones you hear, shake everybody's hand, or don't be too good to be staying in the ring and staying in shape. Always be on the move. If you could add anything to that list, whether it be a pet peeve that you have, maybe of somebody in the locker room, or an advice that you would give to somebody who's young in a locker room, what would it be?
If you're in the Indies, prepare to not be able to shower, and get used to the idea of not taking a shower after your match. Because I was in ECW, and apparently we only ran buildings when I was there that didn't have showers. and I was so used to taking a shower after every match, because I've been working for years in companies, that I would take a bird bath. I would pull up to this. There's always a sink somewhere, and I'd get in this sink, strip all my clothes off. This was back when you could strip naked in front of everybody and not give two shits. Nobody cared. And I'd strip naked and start washing my balls and washing my everything and taking a bath in the sink, in a bird bath. And then eventually I just smartened up. I was like, I give up. Not even the women were showering, after the show. They wouldn't even, nobody's taking a shower because there is no shower. I'm like, I just joined the crowd. And they broke me.
Hell yeah,
I love
dude.
that one. Prepare
The
not
flip
to
side
shower.
of it, you always hear people talk
dude
about
wipes now
wrestling
for that
fans
stuff,
not wearing
man.
deodorant, and he said, "Fuck it, we're just going with the flow." I like it.
Yeah, they make dude wipes now for that.
Yeah, I was the only one who was clean after the match. I was like, and then you're bleeding, and you're trying to stop your bleeding and take a bird bath. I was like, forget this. I'm just gonna tape the forehead up and skip the bird bath because I was the only one taking it anyway, and I just shower tonight when I get home from the bar.
There you go.
I feel that coming from the world of MMA, that was one of my biggest things is making like, dude, I have to shower when we're done training because I had like this mortal feel of staph infection. But J-Bone, go ahead.
I got 2 questions left, man, and one's pretty serious, and one is we're kind of fantasy booking. But on a serious note, when you hear wrestling fans talk about wrestling psychology, I feel like that's something we're really missing these days in the product. But when we go back, there's always the guys that names get brought up, and they're usually Taker, Sting, Bray Wyatt, and Raven. Well, how does that make you feel later on in your life now?
I didn't know I was being included in that list, but it makes you feel great. Yeah, I didn't know that.
Yeah, wrestling psychology. I think for me in the beginning, you were before Sting, and Sting was one of my favorites of all time. You were the like mysterious guy that everybody could kind of relate to. We just
Before
didn't
he
know
did
the
the
real
Crow,
story.
yeah.
You know what I mean? So it was one of the more you felt bad for the bad guy almost. Like he's going through something.
But then I would that was planned. I would make it so just as you start to feel bad for him, he would do something so despicable you couldn't.
Yeah, like crucify Sandman. That got me in trouble in school. Because I was telling my friend I told my friend, you got to see this. This guy, he crucified this guy. And then I get a call. My mom's like, did you tell some kid in school to watch wrestling because he was crucifying the guy? I'm like, yeah, that was me. Sorry.
Like, sorry, Mom.
Yeah, well, you're not going to church.
Well, you're not going to church.
It is what it is. But on the flip side, like I said, I know you're a big MMA guy. We got this White House card coming up next year. If you got to pick the main event, who would it be for you on that White House card?
I want to see it, but I don't know how. Like, let me just start it by saying that Taporia versus Islam. I want to see that, and I'd love to see Taporia go for a third title, but I just think he's too small. I just think he's going to get hossed like Zhang Weili got hossed by Valentina Shevchenko. But if I saw them next to each other, I'd want to see them next to each other before I made my final decision. But that would be the biggest money-making match. Well, other than Jones and Pereira, or Jones and Aspinall. If Aspinall gets through, gone.
Which fight would you rather see out of those two? Do you want to see Aspinall and Jones, or do you think the Pereira fight's the more fun fight?
No, I want to see Aspinall and Jones.
I agree.
Yeah, I mean the Pereira one's it would be a bigger deal, I think. But I'd rather see the Aspinall one. I want some conclusion to the story.
Closure, right? We need closure on that.
Yeah, it took us a long time to get over the Ngannou no closure storyline. That took a couple years to get over. That we weren't going to have it. I mean, now I'm like, why would I even care about that? Not exactly, but you know what I mean. Whereas for the longest time, I was like, man, I really want to see that. That sucks.
Well, especially because it does Tom Aspinall dirty too, because he's been the interim champion forever, and it said 10 ways to Sunday he'd love to fight John Jones, and John Jones, rightfully so. I mean, he's earned the right to be able to do that, but he's like, it doesn't do anything for me. When in the interim, Aspinall still got the interim belt, and he can't ever be considered the champion until Jones is out of the way.
Yeah, but you know what? But I don't agree with that. You know why? Because it's just like Charles Oliveira. He never beat Khabib, but he was still recognized as the champion because and same with Cormier. Cormier was recognized as the champion, even though he never beat. Even after he didn't beat Jones twice, and then Jones got suspended, and then Cormier got the belt. I guess after a couple of fights, you forgot about that. You know what I mean? People have short memories. We really do.
DC didn't, that's for sure. Well, John Jones didn't either, did he?
No.
I'm saying, but as an audience, I'm saying we have short memories.
Yeah. DC is one of my favorites of all time. I'd put that guy against just about anybody, man.
Hey, man, I was literally just talking about this with my guy, Bad News Ben Lagman. One of our past guests of the show and a good friend of mine, Miles Jury, fought Charles Oliveira at one point, and I couldn't stand him. I couldn't stand Oliveira because he missed weight by like 7 pounds on my buddy, right? And then the guy goes to 155 and just becomes a killer.
Unbelievable.
Just insane. That ride that he's been on, dude, is nuts. And you can't not like Charlie Olives. He made a fan out of me, and I couldn't stand the guy when he missed weight against the homie like that.
Yeah, he's amazing. He's probably my favorite fighter.
That's a hell of a compliment, man. That's the clip. Charles Oliveira, man. Well, I appreciate the time. I feel like we're going to have to do a round 2 sometime and talk MMA with Ravenn, because I had no idea before doing my research how big of an MMA guy you were, man. This has been a joy to get to talk to you. I appreciate you guys letting us check out the movie so that we could talk about it. If you guys are checking this out, make sure you check out ko3c.com and bodyslam.net, as I'll have a full review of that. And Ravenn, for you, before we let you go, anybody that hasn't seen the movie yet, let them know what they can expect. Let them know where they can find it and where they can find everything that is Ravenn.
All right. The movie is available on Amazon Prime. It's called Nevermore, The Ravenn Effect. You got to type in Nevermore. You almost have to type in the whole thing. Because I went to look on it, and I figured after NEV it would start showing up. But I think I had to type in like NEVERMOR before it finally showed up. So who knows? So, but yes. So you get up, you'll cry, you'll throw up on yourself, you'll get an erection. No, it's really entertaining. I mean, I think the director made a fascinating movie. It put it this way, it puts me in so much pain that I won't even watch it anymore, and that's how beautiful the story is. And on my podcast is the Ravenn Effect Podcast. You can find that on all your podcast places, podcasts, whatever, just wherever you find the podcast, it's probably there. If not, go somewhere else, find it. It's a new episode every Monday. Don't expect any wrestling talk because there's almost none. But there's everything else, just nonsense and ridiculous, incessant bantering. And the show's at its best when all three of my two co-hosts are all talking about a different subject at the same time and talking over each other. That's probably our best stuff when we're all ignoring each other. Yeah, that's about it. And then I'm taking a well-deserved vacation in about a month. And taking the next month. I got a show in Milwaukee. In Milwaukee on Blizzard Blast or something.
I've heard of that show.
On December 3rd, I think, or December 5th or whatever. And I'm supposed to be at WrestleCade, but I'm still waiting for the promoter of the guy who's bringing me in to give me my plane ticket, so who knows. It's a wrestling business. Ticket shows up the last day or it doesn't show up at all. Whatever. And then after that, I'm taking January off.
Hell yeah, man. Much needed time to decompress and all those things. If you guys are in the Michigan area, I mentioned before that I've gotten to see Ravenn there. Make sure you come check out Clash Wrestling this Saturday. I will be in the building. Last week's guest, Richard Holiday, will be on that one, as well as Allison Kay. And if you guys are into the MMA side of things, make sure you check out our friends at Two Piece Promotions. They've got their fight going down up in Cadillac. There's plenty of fights in the mitten, but like the man said, make sure you go check it out. Nevermore, The Ravenn Effect, out on Amazon Prime. Make sure you hit that subscribe button if you guys are here. And until next time, and in the in-between time, we appreciate y'all. Hit that subscribe button. Peace.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
So much for your time, man.